All right.
Yes.
The global pandemic has affected the world, and it is going to be, the new normal. The world is not going to be like before ever now, and it has changed. So, what has really changed is not just our way of living, the way we work, the way we connect, uh, but the entire course has actually changed. And this is my message to everybody today: is if you don't change, change will change you. And this is the key mantra of the situation today, post COVID. What changes, where changes are affecting, how we have to bring in change, align, realign, we'll see that in the course of action. But when we say that the world has changed, it's not just probably a specific narrow context of a particular industry or a company. Of course, things around us are always changing and evolving. But this time, what is different is that this change was sudden, this change was global, and this change has not left any choice. The change is also not limited to a particular industry, company, or society, religion, community, but the impact is going to be quite universal in nature. The way we have been practicing social distancing, the social connect, social behaviors are also going to change, and all the industries that are related with it are undergoing a massive disruption. So we'll see some of those areas as we proceed. So what we are going to see is mainly 3 points, three agenda points that I will actually try and cover: the industry and its impact. So first is what is the quick recovery, and what is the mechanism for us for a quick recovery? How it is going to be leading towards the global slowdown. And probably this is also not something new. We have been experiencing economic slowdown in many parts of the world, but what the COVID-19 has done is it has slowed down it even more, and it has also imposed several challenges on the global economy, and that certainly is going to lead to even more, I would say, challenging global recession. And these things are all interlinked, right? We today live in the societies, communities, and we exist, thrive on interconnected economies, right? So anything is happening. I mean, as they used to say in IT, that if US is sneezing, India, gets the cold, and it's as simple as that. So today, the global supply chains are so interlinked and interconnected that anything happening anywhere is going to be impacting. Now, we are actually moving towards again quite a challenging and maybe potentially a little longer global recession. Is everything gloomy, or there is a ray of hope at the end of tunnel? Especially for India, I think the outlook seems to be much better. And let me also give you some perspective that how things are going to be different. So the first one is going to be um, what are the sectors that are actually changing, and how things are going to be impacting. So the first thing, and I was actually just a few couple of days back, I was hosting a webinar with business standards and some of the top premium B schools across country, and there we were actually discussing about this same thing. The full-time traditional jobs are going to reduce, and they're going to be reduced in industry, in SME, in corporate sector. So we have to actually start looking at it from a very different lens now, and how we can explore more and more different non-conventional opportunities, be it individual career or be it innovators, be it SME, and things like that. The second thing in going to be normal is that the salary structures are going to be changing. I mean, it's not just the salary, but your fixed income, steady income concept is going to be fading now, and it will be always, it is going to be impact based incentive. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a shop, or you're a corporate, you really have to think, realign, identify certain, new revenue streams, because the normal way of industry and work is going to be fading. Remote and digital way of working is going to be new normal, and this itself is an evident, right? We are not meeting at the chamber's office physically in a meeting room and talking over a cup of tea, but all of us have probably grabbed our cup of tea and we are sitting on the virtual conference. So this is going to be new normal, and even if post lockdown things get normal, this is going to increase more and more. So connections are going to be increasing, communication is going to be increasing, but the proximity is going to be changing, right? Be it social distancing, digital distancing will actually be a very, very different way. And, now the value perception across levels and across industries, and not only industries, but the value perception across countries is also going to be something that is going to be changing. What this means is that your customers will actually renegotiate contracts with you, and they will not only look at cost reduction. They'll also look at your value and alignment in their business initiatives, be it survival phase or be it scale up phase, be it innovation, achieving competitive market leadership, and so on. In fact, if you actually see, this is also going to be a very important aspect of how a political leadership across different nations actually look at this. And the value perception, few examples that we've been known that China is facing a heat of a perception problem from global industry and political leaderships from many countries. At the same time, if you actually see, probably for a change, India leadership is doing most of the things in a right way. So be it actually supplying the medicine to most of the established economies to further improve our trade ties with them, and our international relations has like never before, right? And even during the severe lockdowns where airports and cargoes were completely shut down, India had been airlifting a lot of medicines. In fact, Indian pharma companies had been actually doing a continuous production to be able to supply gigantic assignments to these countries, whether it is US, Europe, Israel, and so on. And if you can see the impact is that the WHO leadership is coming to India, UN seat is being confirmed. So see what are the certain benefits that you are enjoying from the value perception, and it's not only in the industry, right? So the micro level, macro level, the value perception is going to be making a big change, and that's why I think it is very important to understand that. The innovation and startup will actually see spinning the wheel, and this is probably going to be accelerated even more. So last few years, if you see Startup India, Stand Up India, there's so many different kinds of initiatives that have been coming in. The Mudra loans for entrepreneurs, for SME, MSME, getting a lot of rural people into the financial sector, be it banking, insurance, and so on. Thanks to telecom revolution, that it has actually reduced the digital divide, and then it's never now the urban versus rural, but everybody is enjoying 4G, and we are set to go in 5G very soon. That might be a little delay because it is quite an investment intensive initiative. But having said that, if you actually see that India is coming to a new normal, I would not say we've achieved that, but we are certainly going very fast towards it to be able to bounce back from this particular situation. And that is what we are also going to be seeing in the later parts. Now the innovation and startup, for example, there are so many large Indian IT companies that are announcing that next 2-3 years they will be actually shifting work locations from their urbanized locations to work from home, or to the rural pocket centers, and absolutely distributed the work locations. Now imagine a scenario that there's somebody who's actually working in large IT companies servicing some projects for maybe the US client, and probably after doing say 8 to 2 or 8 to 4 kind of a shift, in the evening he's actually going into a farm and doing some organic farming using drones and some of the high-tech stuff. And more importantly, they will actually enjoy the home life. and not just probably staying in urban areas, also running in the rat race for reaching office, coming back every day, no traffic jams and stuff like that. Now, these are some of the optimistic views that might emerge while we are decentralizing. Uh, had we hoped for it, prayed for it, probably it would have been different. Though it has been imposed, certain things are actually going to be, drastically changing. What's more important, and this new jobs is not just, from the serviceman point of view, but these new jobs are probably what is industry is looking for. An industry will look for more digitized smart products and digitized services, is improving the overall customer experience in the value chain, and that needs a different kind of mindset, right? I mean, we are going to see some of the sectors, some of the functions, how in industry they're actually being impacted. But what is more important here is also to understand that these jobs, like for example, selling, right? Uh, how a sales guy in a retail company or a mobile company or a healthcare or an insurance company is going to do. They're not going to be physically moving in the market, right? So they will have digitized AI empowered bots that are going to do, the customer interactions, and they will actually market and sell more and more their products. So they'll explore their markets, but there will be a different remote way, a digital way of, working on their business expansion. So when we talk in that context, for example, automotive industry is moving from a conventional engines into electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So the manufacturing process is undergoing a massive change and disruption. Supply chains are changing. The goods and products and capacities that we have as an install base, that needs to be upgraded. So you need to bring in more different ways of manufacturing. What is that is required in the market, at what cost, at what time, what is going to be the new product development life cycle, what's an impact and value you're delivering to your customers. That actually is going to determine how you will win in the game. Another very important aspect is reskilling, and e-learning adoption is going to be massive going forward, right? And we see most of the CBC school patterns, they already have conducted, probably there has been a delay of few weeks, but they have also completely moved into a virtual classrooms, and it's no longer we are only reading that in Finland and in Singapore, people actually, school going kids are taking their lessons in a virtual classroom. It's very much happening in India. It's very much happening all over the places. Not only that, but private tutors have actually, have been going on to different kind of, virtual video conferencing tools, and they have not been stopping their classes. Now, understand, these are things probably we would have imagined in a movie, in a Hollywood movie a few years back. It's normal and it's happening now. In fact, when I actually had gone to pick some vegetables and grocery, and I was really heartened to see that hardly any vegetable vendor was asking for money. In fact, there was one, somebody who was actually saying that, okay, do you have a change? And he actually pulled out some notes from his wallet. And the shopkeeper said, sir, why don't you do either Google Pay or make a payment on Beam? Because we would prefer not to have a currency. Because we heard that, the disease also gets transmitted with the notes. Now, how false or true that claim is a different issue, but a hawker is insisting on a digital payment. Just imagine maybe a few years back, if it would have not gone digital, how we would have handled certain things today, right? When we were actually locked in our homes, and these things would have not been there in place. And hence I'm saying that digitization is not just going to automate and take away a few jobs, but it is also going to create new opportunities and jobs, and we have to look at it from that lens as well. So I'm not an economic guru, but let me set some things in a perspective. At this stage, probably let me give you some economic forecasts, and what do they mean, and how can we translate them into the Indian context. So here is an interesting study done by Bloomberg, and this interesting bar chart, if you actually see, it actually talks about three things. The dark blue one is no corona situation. What was the forecast? The orange one is actually the baseline scenario with corona situation, and this light blue is actually the risk scenario of this pandemic post corona has happened, right? And you will actually see the orange and the light blue, there is quite a steep difference. Now let me just help you understand and interpret that, right? So if you actually see the global growth scenario, what could be the economic and the GDP growth trend, that has been varying from some negative numbers to on an average about 3%, whereas India and China was anticipated to be the highest at 5.8 and close to about 6%. Now, what has happened is the light blue is actually the correction that what is going to likely to be the forecast. Now, if you actually translate this to the net, the economic battle grounds are shifting now, and it is no longer going to be the a mixed crowd or a crowded match, but it is actually going to be the kind of finals is going to be India and China. That's going to be the net, and from the supply chain, from the market, from the consumer base. If you actually see, these are the most promising emerging economies in the world, and we do have certain challenges on hand. I'm not losing a realistic view.
Move to the next.
While we are looking at this,
we call as analyze and prosper.
there's some echo actually. I hope I'm audible and I'm not going too fast or too slow.
No. Somebody I think has started it on two devices and kept it side by side. So requesting everyone to please mute their audio.
Not a problem. Now, what is also going to be important is that the trade is going to be interesting post-COVID. It's not only we exporting, but the imports, and also we have to look at the impact of the global supply chain, and that's going to be the really tricky one. It's not only the market access, a policy, a market, a particular sector, but when we actually look at the new world post-COVID situation, how are we prepared to emerge as one of the most effective link in the supply chain? And that is something which I feel is going to be very interesting game. And if you actually break down this to the numbers, look at what were the initial anticipated forecast. So the real GDP growth in 2020, post COVID-19, and what was the earlier forecast. Now, instead of going to all the numbers, look at China was 5.9 and India was estimated to be 6. Now, the revised numbers, the GDP growth is 1% for China, and it is estimated 2.1 to India, right, in this financial year. And that's massive. That's massive. It is not actually, just only for the television studio, prime time debates where a lot of intellectuals are coming and with their political biases, they're actually just making arguments, shouting, screaming. But understand in a post-COVID situation, and these are all the, IMF and, the World Bank's forecasts. So 2.1 is massive, And also, if you read between lines, from 5.9 to 1% for China, what it also means is that are they in a position to accept that massive decline of almost about 5% of a negative, not negative, but 5% of a declined growth? Because if you see last 20 years, China's GDP has been growing on an average 4 to 6%. And probably this is the first time their growth numbers are going to be, actually going down, and the capacities that they have and some of the challenges that China has with their access production and, some of the perception battle that they might face might lead to a lot of challenge and chaos within China as well. And then there are lots of companies, lots of countries are also anticipating is that there is going to be probably a world view how they look at China, then there is going to be China internal view how they handle the situation, and it's going to be chaotic. Now also creates an opportunity and a value perception that they have to look at options. And when they're looking at options, it's not only India. Of course, we do have our own set of challenges, and how we are going to be building some of the confidence index on several parameters where it is attracting foreign investments, ease of doing business, infrastructure. And there's so many different factors that actually govern. And then we also would face challenges from emerging countries within Southeast Asia, be it Vietnam, Malaysia. These countries are also very hungry to take on some of the growth initiatives that will also be serving them opportunities post-COVID. So, it is not only the reflection of some numbers, but if you read between lines, that actually reveals quite a good amount of story. Now, in US, for that matter, from 1.7 to going negative, almost close to about 3%, is again massive. So, the new normal is going to be, the world is flattening. The economies are actually, coming together. And with those, certain indicators, I think India has a lot to gain to, make the most out of this situation. Now, I was actually talking about how certain things are shifting, industries changing, the impact on, some of the functions, jobs, how it is likely to be. Let's look at that. But before that, probably just a wrong animation sequence on this slide. Let me actually share with you first what is changing and how the entire supply chains have changed. Now, if you see the conventional, linear pipe of supply chain, there were manufacturers, and all the suppliers would supply to the factories, and the manufacturers or producers will produce the goods, and they will ship that into the market so that the customers will consume it, right, and consume services and the products. But today what has happened is producers are becoming the content providers, right, and the consumers or customers are becoming eyeballs, and they are connected with what we call as a digital supply chain or an internet pipe. For example, if you're looking for a smart jacket, shirt, or you're looking at maybe some food to be ordered online, or you're looking at some electronic good or caravan radio to be purchased, you're actually looking at a content from some mobile application. And that manufacturer could be anywhere, but through the distribution supply chain, and we see a lot of disruption happening in Indian retail sector. I mean, look, simply put, look at an Amazon example. Sitting in your house, your eyeballs are actually looking at something. They're looking at a food. Probably you may go to Zomato, or you may go to Swiggy and order something. If you're looking at a jacket which is actually manufactured in maybe England, you get that being delivered in your home. Understand? So through your mobile application, and then the producer are actually not only producing, but they are putting that onto the marketplaces, online marketplaces, where they are actually being looked upon as a content, right? So the shift between the production, the shift between from a manufacturing to being making it available in the marketplace as a content online, be it a catalog or online, the products that are available, and through this digitized supply chain, how they are now impacting industrial job functions. Now, if you see, sales is the function that is going to be most affected, right? Because of this digitization and companies getting closer to their customers by way of understanding their behaviors and psychology. And no wonder why these Androids and Facebooks and Apples have been able to understand the customer buying behaviors, their patterns better, and then they be able to cross-sell, upsell, retain these customers rather than conventional people. If you look at teenagers, they will walk into a store, they'll actually see jacket, they'll look at the cost, and they'll step out of the shop and order that on Flipkart or probably Myntra, right? And that has become a new normal. Most of the people are actually India, this Diwali season we saw there were almost 100 crores worth rupees phones were bought on first Diwali discount day. Only mobile phone purchases, you can imagine, right? So the trends are changing. People are no longer wanting to go to the shops industry to physically touch and feel the goods and buy them, but buying behaviors are actually shifting. If you see, production capacities are seeking more and more automation, robotics, coming in, and that is, becoming a very, very different way of how people are producing goods. The supply chains are also becoming, a lot automated. Now, we have read with an interest that India is one of the largest telecom company has recently sought an investment from Facebook, and they are, setting up a massive retail chain across India. And near Gandhinagar in Gujarat, they are actually piloting a complete robotic based inventory and warehousing. So it's a very different way of how you are handling your supply chains, how you are handling your, the logistics and distribution parts of your business, right? HR, if you actually see, not only remote working, but the physical interviews might actually start fading up, and people will go more and more video interviews, online interviews, by putting bots there for um, the assessment, and actually, coming at with the confidence index about the candidate, looking at their eyeballs, pitch, tone of voice, content of, the talk and the CV, and matching that in real time scenario. A lot of things are actually going to be changing, right? So look at, for instance, finance, right? Everything compliance is going to be digital now. Some of the loan waivers, compliances, deadlines being extended, things can happen because now they are online, right? Otherwise that would have been chaos. Even if government wishes to, do certain things in that way, they would have not been able to do it. So maybe let me take just a pause. I hope I'm not going too fast, because there are a lot of pointers, but I want to see that I'm with the audience.
Yes, going fine, sir. No issues.
All right. So let's look at some opportunity areas. And this was actually a very interesting study that was done by Business Today about a year back. And this was actually giving the classification and a percentage wise distribution by quantifying the total industrial share in the India's overall contribution. Now if you see, agriculture industry contributions, and these are percentage wise contributions, right? So the highest was service sector. Construction was 8%, trade, hotel, transport was 18%, financial real estate was 21%, public administration, defense was 15%. Now, what's interesting is if you actually look at some of these numbers, that what were these contributing numbers and how they're going to be flipped. So if you actually look at trade, hospitality, transport, this is massively going to be impacting, right? If you look at financial investments and real estate, this is going to be under massive disruption, right? So these percentage will go away. But the interesting part of the economy, and especially the evolving economies, are these are going to be allocated somewhere else. Now, if you look at public administration, defense, this will actually grow. If you look at agriculture, healthcare, that is going to be the boosting next couple of years. The kind of investments that you will see in agriculture, food, and healthcare, pharmaceutical in India is going to be all-time high. And if you see on the left side, these are some of the bullet pointers which actually talk about what are the opportunity areas. So first and foremost is the global leadership. And this leadership is not only from the industry representation point of view. And as I mentioned in the early part of my presentation, that India actually now getting a confirmed seat in the UN, and we actually getting a leadership position in the WHO. These are extremely important and timely symbolic things, how India is arriving as a global leader in these situations. Infrastructure, we will see a huge massive investments and a push by government, is if India has to leverage and take an advantage of this global pandemic. This is one sector which will see a massive investments, and the trade ports, the cargoes, the industrial infrastructure that is required. In fact, we are also seeing, I'm not going into the politics of it, but we are actually seeing some of the chief ministers are making extremely bold and attractive statements by bringing in some foreign companies. And I'm referring to this Uttar Pradesh government, and that actually reminded me as an IT practitioner for a few years. This is what exactly Hyderabad had done when India was rising on global horizon, and they actually invested a lot of investments in Hyderabad by throwing a lot of incentive and promotional schemes. And I read with an interest that Uttar Pradesh government is actually saying that they want to create 6.5 lakh jobs in next 1 year, and they're inviting a lot of foreign companies by giving them a lot of incentives to set up. There will be different set of challenges also with it. It's not just making a political statement or things like that. And hence I said, without going into the political merits, that's an opportunity. And we as a country has to start leveraging and then start working backward at how we actually set that up. Agriculture, if you actually see, we need to change our mindset to look at agriculture. And I'm sure some of the labor movement that we've seen, there are workforce migrations that are happening in the country now, and they're happening big time. People in their minds are also realizing that in urban areas there's probably a lifestyle, but there's no life, there's no dignity. There's just now money earning opportunity. But then in this situation, people are actually getting a lot of realization. So a lot of talent that is actually going back, workforce that is going back to their hometowns and rural areas, these people will think that they can do certain different things, and with their experiences, exposures in the working in industrial sectors will also lead them to set up, whether it is startup or thinking of some innovative ideas, goods and supply services in agriculture, healthcare, manufacturing kind of a setup, and that will start giving the rise and start also balancing between India and Bharat. If I have to put things into that perspective, some between the lines, if I have to give some pointers, domestic tourism will actually gain momentum. If you look at electronics and components, currently the total world's supply chain, China controls almost about 30% of the electronics and electronic component supply, right? And they have been the highest, and whether any country likes it or no, they have to be dependent, whether it is pharma production, whether it is electronics and components and things like that. So India had missed this bus about a decade and a half back. Probably we have been served with that opportunity again to bounce on the manufacturing, electronics and component engineering, instead of only looking at few conventional jobs and some urban cities as a destination. If we read between lines, I think there is a lot that can be done to be able to leverage on these opportunities. Now let me share with you, while this is happening in the industrial sector, how some challenges and opportunities can also surface. And this is an interesting study that has been done by Deloitte about the future work. And what they talk about is basically, the three dimensions in a very, very interesting way. But some of the, interesting questions that we can actually, pose is that how does this new world of future digital going to unfold? And, what kind of work is required to be done, how that can be done, who's going to do it, where that work can happen, and so on and so forth, right? So, the manufacturing is not going to be conventional manufacturing. If I have to give an example of an automotive company, they would actually not want to manufacture everything in-house. They will start leveraging like construction or an IT industry, a big time outsourcing, and not just a component getting assembled, but the assemblies coming to, maybe the shop floor, or almost semi-finished good coming. So they can actually focus only on the finance, new product development and design, customer experience, assembling, IP, and branding. And this is going to be a new normal. This is going to be a new normal. And we've been talking to several manufacturing automotive companies, and what's actually coming up is everybody wants to now become a Teslas of their own, manufacturing plants, by not choosing to do everything internal, but how they can be really introducing breakthrough innovations for the global markets by doing least in-house and leveraging on the supply chain. Now, what that means is that conventionally, don't look at those thousands of jobs somewhere in the manufacturing, but those jobs are changing places, right? Their jobs are changing skills that are required. The jobs are changing, the mindsets that are required to identify and, leverage on those opportunities. And how does it actually translate is that basically the work that is required to be done. Now, who is going to do that work? And when you actually look at the work and a worker, this actually becomes, a perspective that what are the skill sets and a mindset that is required by that worker, and what is going to be the workplace, right? I come from an IT industry, and when we actually do our product development and we have software engineers programming and coding, and we have been tuned to, opening up an office at 9 o'clock in the morning. People come there, they have a cup of coffee, and then they start with their scrum meetings, and then the engineers are coding, all along. They'll have, lunch breaks in between, and in the evening, they will actually go home. That has been, the life as usual for many years. But what is going to change now is that last 1 month we have realized that there were so many unnecessary things that we were doing. Now, if we are giving people an autonomy and they work from home, fortunately in our industry that people can have a laptop and an internet connection and they can work from wherever they can. And we are actually seeing that, they have been able to not only clock in the required time, but being able to deliver with the required productivity, because they're saving a lot of time that was going in travel, unnecessary stress. Also, a lot of time that would actually go waste in doing many other things, so the concentration that was required, and we are actually seeing a surge in productivity with some people who actually have demonstrate the right kind of mindsets. Now, understand this is going to be a new normal. That okay, why are we forcing? And in fact, a company like TCS, when they're announcing that probably by 2025, 75% of their workforce will be working from home, kind of a more, that's massive, because that also has a huge impact on real estate and all other allied services. But why are we conventionally only dependent on certain other industrial sectors? So as they say in the Silicon Valley, have your meal before it is hatched. We have to start identifying opportunities that will also give a good birth to many things. Imagine that, what happens to a real estate sector, construction sector, or what happens to life in Pune and Mumbai kind of cities. But if these people are actually going to be working from home, from their own rural areas, their level of income is going to be same, their spending pattern is going to be same. So how can we set up maybe retail stores, amusement parks, how we can actually decentralize and take certain things to the rural areas where people had a desire to actually work in the urban cities. Now that is a massive opportunity. If we are conventionally thinking, oh God, I want to live my life next 50 years the way we have been living last 50 years, that's not going to happen, right? So that is why it is very important how we actually look at this new normal. Now let's look at some of the challenges that we will have, and I think this is also something very important that we have to consider. First is probably we are hoping that by 21st, 22nd of May, a majority of world will have a clarity and some control on this COVID situation, and it is anticipated that some surveys saying that by June or July timeframe that might be under a good control. But if you actually see some of the high-end researches on the healthcare segment, they say that it might take few years to completely get rid of this virus permanently. What is more important is that the nature of this virus is actually rebounding again and again. So how countries make sure that they are not getting into this trap or a risk, because that might actually, if you're putting 2 steps ahead, you might go 10 steps behind. And frequent lockdowns is not something that's going to help any country for that matter. So that is one big challenge that all countries are actually thinking that how they can handle this situation. Most importantly, lack of skilled manpower, and skilled not in a conventional manufacturing vocational skills I'm talking about. We are talking about the multi-skilling, right? So that's something that actually creates a value chain. Most important is unanticipated demand, the uncertainty. We have to actually live with this as a new reality. That how can you quickly manage and align yourself with the surging demands and shrinking demands, right? That's going to be something which is going to be very challenging for industry. Liquidity crunch is again no rocket science, but if you actually see that a lot of money has suddenly gone from the market, and it is going to take some time to get it back and settle it down. SMEs especially, if you actually see, they have faced a lot of challenge and this turmoil. So it's going to take some time for them to also have that financial discipline and cash flow situations back to normal, so that they can take a little bit of a risk and start investing to scale up, to make shift and so on. So the liquidity crunch is going to be some challenge for short term, definitely. The movement of people, and I was mentioning few things, that movement of people from urban to rural. In fact, we also see a lot of people will actually move from their international locations back to India, and India will also see a massive people movement, and it's not just going to be the short term. At least 30 to 70% of this people movement is going to be the lasting at on 3 to 5 years horizon, which means that there might be some sense that might prevail, that extreme of urbanization might start getting under control, but the standard of living, quality of life, infrastructure in rural areas will start going up, and financial services, retail, service sector opportunities will start emerging in the rural areas as well. What's very important is that we have to also change the social mindset, and we have to be positive and optimistic, in bracket realistic, rather than being pessimistic. And why I have actually put this small graph here purposely, because on a social media past few days there have been a clipping that is actually being circulating, that the Nomura, which is actually one of the leading research consulting firm, that their projection is negative for India on their growth projection. And absolutely no problem with that, right? Some countries, they have rated Vietnam more than India, and I'm not making this only from the patriotic view. I'm not making this statement. But what I'm saying is that if you actually see, this actually study has been done by at least 10, 12 consulting firms. Now, what happens is, some of time our, television media takes up only one thing, the Nomura research, and they will start flooding that everywhere, and that starts affecting people mindset, because maybe they have nothing to do, so they will actually start TV at 9 o'clock prime time news, and then they start, Nomura is saying that India has no prospect and what we are doing on earth. But look at the Moody's, Goldman, World Bank, IMF, Asia Development, their forecasts are quite bullish and positive. And they have also done quite a scientific study in terms of projecting their forecast, what is going to happen post COVID to India situation, right? So let's not get victimized by some negative thoughts and reports, but let us also look at positives and then arrive at our own rationality. And that is what I mean by having that social mindset of accepting change in a right way, so that as a society, as a community, as an industry, we are being able to become more resilient in bouncing back from situations like this. Needless to say, government policy and ease of doing business has to be done, and we as a society has also to start building our peer pressure, because we can't keep losing opportunities like this. And I see a tremendous opportunity for India to come back very strong from this situation. And it is very, very important, maybe be it for a cleanup, be it certain sector reforms. There are a lot of things that are actually happening, which are making industry suffocate in some areas, right? Be it liquidity, be it some of the ease of doing business things and like that. But we have to start looking at industrial view, that how we can have SME revival, and it is like an 80-20 syndrome, right? The 80% of the GDP, or not 80%, 95% of the GDP controlled by the large companies, they employ less than 2% of the population. But if you actually see the SME sector, that employs more than 90% of the India's population in worker class. Now, if those are really the numbers, and why it is very important that SMEs are the lifeline of any nation. And that is why it is very important that the government takes a very prudent view of how they can create an environment for an SME for quick revival. If SMEs survive and bounce back fast, the economy will have the golden days ahead of it. If it's not only the large companies being able to make some smart investments and shifting some customer behaviors and buying, selling, trading, but it is how as a society we are being able to achieve that impact. And SMEs have a very, very important role to play there. Supply chain, very, very important aspect, how we can reduce the dependence on China, especially in manufacturing, in electronics, in pharmaceutical. These are areas where China has built huge capacities, and they have massive capacities for global supply chain. If India works like what Narayan Murthy mentioned few days back, that we have to start working 60 hours a day to leverage and make most out of this opportunity, it is very essential. And if we work 60 hours and week, it will still take 10 years for India to reach the manufacturing capacity to match China. And that's the reality, right? It's not going to happen only on the positive emotion in next day. So if we have to build those capacities, make those right investments, attract the foreign investments and companies to set up things here, we have to also demonstrate our capability, that how we are giving them the return on investment, right? And hence it is very important that we look at things from the global supply chain point of view. It's not only some companies are actually manufacturing goods and services somewhere and we are only consuming them, but how can we have them in India? In fact, one example that I can quote, the electronics and IT minister Ravi Shankar Prasad was addressing our NASSCOM conference last year, and he mentioned about 10 years back, India had only two mobile manufacturing companies, manufacturing factories in India. Today, there are more than 24 factories in India, right? Samsung has actually closed down their manufacturing in China for several reasons, and they actually have the largest, manufacturing capacity. Foxconn for Apple has come to India. So a lot of things are actually, changing and happening, but we have to take an advantage, not only for the domestic market, but also for exports. And again, I'm linking it back to the innovation ecosystem and social mindset. If we become little India pro, we will, and I'm not saying anti multinationals or anti anything, because sometimes when you talk to intellectuals about it, they immediately start being cynical about it, that okay, we also do a lot of outsourcing to of the US companies. Why are we being anti global mindset? It is not anti global mindset, but it is very important that we have a pro India. And by the way, US doesn't outsource us because they like us. They outsource us because they want to achieve competitive advantage and become more innovative and successful companies. And that is why they believe that India has much talented workforce than what they will get in their country. So it's like a supply chain principle. They come to us because they see a value. They don't come to us for our reasons. They come to us for our reasons. If they know the reasons better, and if we don't, probably that's not a good situation to be in. And hence, though we have a challenges, I also have a reason to believe that these challenges can be overcome, and we can certainly look at that. Because I come from an IT industry, this slide that I have kept here purposely to give you a sense that how we are looking at from an IT lens to the global spending that's happening. The way IT industry has looked at the world, this actually, infographic actually talks about which are industries that are set to gain and which are industries that are likely to have short-term, mid-term impact. And this is an interesting study done recently by IDC and especially the COVID situation. So if you look at healthcare, education, communication, government, and retail are likely to gain a lot. And if you look at tourism, the business travel is going to be big time impacted, and the industry related to it, some of the industries like aviation is already big time struggling. Hospitality industry is under massive price pressures, but they will have to reinvent themselves rather than just having an access capacity, that how they can deploy that more innovatively. The oil and air services, manufacturing, the transportation, financial services sector, they are likely to face an impact. More digitization, more intelligent services, and things like that. When you talk about embedded intelligence, when you talk about machine intelligence or artificial intelligence, they're not just software branches. But if you actually look at how you can make use of technology, digital technologies in empowering your business models and fuel their growth, that will give a quite a good a springing and bouncing back effect. So cost cutting, cost optimization, and value optimization is going to be the new normal for global leaders, and India, I think, has quite a good opportunity to stand strong. I was actually thinking about what kind of an industry example that I can give, and there's a purposely I have actually taken this slide on the agriculture sector, and what we call in technology world as future of farming, how that is set to change the way this farming and agriculture industry can be looked upon. So if you actually see the location intelligence, soil testing, the texting cows and the smart agriculture, farming data, and all of that, use of drones for doing your soil-based testing and surveys and so on. We are seeing that is happening in some countries, but that should start happening in India big time. Because if you look at agriculture alone, can help India revive its economy. And this is not what I am telling you, but this is what has been validated by many eminent economists. So if you look at agriculture for that matter, knowledge, harvesting, processing, and distribution, all of this, and COVID, I'm sure, has given us that reality check that nothing is more important than food and medicine, and we can be locked for weeks and months at home so we can still survive. So this is a big time opportunity for food and agriculture industry to bounce back, and people to explore opportunities in these sectors as how they can make it a big success for them. And these are some of the examples I have actually purposely given, because this is not just only for software guys. Believe me, in fact, this can be dominated by electronics manufacturing people. I mean, there are tractors that are getting manufactured for the global markets, which are the most intelligent tractors. And I know, be it Mahindra or John Deere, they are actually helping a lot of farmers and their next generations, that they are giving tractors the cultivation as a service, or probably when you buy like an Uber model, you don't need to buy a tractor, but if you need a tractor for you want to do the crop cutting, or you want to do anything in your farm, instead of you making that capital investment like a Uber, you just dial a tractor for a particular shift, and then that can have a light enhancing camera with the floodlights, so the tractor can actually work in maybe 2 shifts and 3 shifts, right? And that can give more innovative models how that can be done, and they can be operated by robotics. They can also have the GPS signaling, tracking, and what job needs to be done and all of that. These things are reality. I'm not talking any fiction movie. I'm not talking gamification, right? This is now and here. It's just that we have to change our way of thinking, be little innovative, and see that what best can be done. Okay, what we did actually, interestingly, and Geeta was briefly mentioning about what we do as a software company. We have developed a made in India software for data science, artificial intelligence, and we actually did. By the way, thank you Maratha Chambers for also giving us the Parquet Innovation Award for this technology platform. Some of our engineers, spending few hours in one day, they actually came out with the analysis of this global pandemic data, especially in the Indian context. And what we did was actually map the entire data to different states. And depending on the color thickness, you can actually see the Maharashtra actually has been unfortunately reporting highest. The highest percentage of foreign national cases in Delhi, that covers almost 50%. And this was probably initial trend. If you analyze that, this was actually the rich people virus that came in from the aircrafts, and that has then gone to the lower sections of the society. Very interesting insights that actually came in. The highest foreign national cases in Delhi and Kerala. If you actually, we also analyzed that per city, the population rising, and what is the capacity that is available in the hospitals, the beds, the medical supply chain, and so on and so forth. And the reason why I wanted to share this use case was this was done by software engineers. They don't understand too much of healthcare. They don't understand too much of economics. So if you just scratch your head, get onto some kind of doing this AI machine learning stuff on, and it's a very good time pass also to spend your leisure time to acquire some good skill, and the kind of insights that you can derive out of it can give you a lot of innovative ideas as how we can do a few things much better. I'm on my second last slide, and this is a message that I would like to give my fellow entrepreneurs, people who are IT professionals, working in industry, students who are there. Understand the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh of business, enterprise, economies, and product life cycle, right? So Brahma is a god of creation, ideation. Vishnu is a god of life, implementation, and Mahesh is a god of destruction or upgrade. every product, every company, every economy has to go through this cycle, and everything that actually falls down has to go up, and anything that goes up has to come down. That's also a nature's law. So whatever is happening around us, let us not get too much affected by it. It is a new normal, and it is also a nature's law. Look at how we are also doing massively on restoring the nature. The ozone layer has been restored more than 45-50% in just 1 month. Clean Ganga, we've spent crores on that, and we could not achieve that. Has been done at no cost. The industrial waste has stopped going in Ganga, and that has actually been cleaned almost to 80-90% now. So there are certain also positive outfalls of some of the things that are happening. Also, if you actually look at my next message is the create value. Don't just look at making quick money, because that's not going to be lasting. If you create a value, the impact will be even more. If you look at the work for value, and not just profits. And one example that I can certainly give is look at Ratan Tata, look at Anand Mahindra. Of course, these are industry stalwarts, and we look at them as role models and source of inspiration. Look at their generosity, and their automotive industry is badly affected. And Anand Mahindra, I have never seen him coming on television and being cynical. In fact, they actually started manufacturing low cost ventilators, and that's not making them profit. That's not their core business. But see that how they're also been able to create those values. In fact, if you look at every employee in the Tata group, they feel so proud that they work with Tata group companies, with what Ratan Tata is doing in this situation, to help out in whatever best possible way they can. And hence it is very important that how you are being able to create a value for markets, value for enterprise, value for country. That's very, very important. And neighbor is enemy, a big enemy. So don't get complex just because somebody else is doing something may not be the right mantra or a formulation for you. Be creative, be original. That's very, very important to bounce back from a situation like this. So I'm on my last slide, and be the change. Let's be the change that we would like to be proud about. There would not be a better illustration than this, that how you can describe a transformation the way butterfly does. It actually goes from a cocoon stage to becoming a beautiful butterfly. It's a very ugly, slow moving and a painful process, but end of day it is beautiful, right? So thank you very much for your patient listening. I hope I have not overshot my time. I'm open for questions.
Prashant, the questions are on the chat. Prashant, the questions are on chat.
Let me just open that. I'm not being able to see. Can somebody help me? If I'm not being able to see the chat.
No, should I read the questions for you so that you can answer?
It would be better, because rather than me figuring out where those questions are, if you can just read some of select ones.
Geeta madam, one request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One request.
Yes, sir.
Please share the PPT, please.
Yeah. So please switch off. Go on your mute. Go on mute, sir. Okay.
I will share presentation with Geeta, and whoever wants a copy, just write to Geeta. She'll share the presentation.
Okay, sir. The first question is, what is the future of SMEs in the post-COVID scenario? How can they gear up to address challenges in market?
Very good question. I think I have already elaborated on this. SMEs are a backbone of any nation, and SME employ highest number of people in this country. SMEs are the lifeline, and when you actually look at the large manufacturing companies, who are their suppliers, the people and their suppliers. If you actually look at that level 1, level 2, level 3, level nth, when you go to that, the mid market companies, SME companies, MSMEs, and the entire supply chain. So from employment perspective, the MSMEs employ more than 80-85% of the workforce in the country. So they are very, very important, and they are going through a challenging phase. But the way I would address it is two ways. it's not only that you can keep looking at the incentives or some of the bailout options. It's very important for SMEs to also think creatively and innovatively, right? Whatever has been your core competence, whatever has been your investment, where you need to concentrate on which industrial sectors. I mean, if you have been supplying conventionally for many years to one particular sector, and unfortunately that sector has been hit, then you are walking towards the dead end. Before you jumping into a pool to show your diving skills, my friends, please see whether there's enough water. Because if without having a sense whether there's enough water, if you jump and then you bang your head, no point in we blaming it on luck. So it is very important that you have to also take into consideration that what is your business and what is your customer's business. Your business will get affected if your customer business gets big time affected. And if that gets affected, what is that you have to change and realign your business, so that you not only survive but you also scale later on. Unfortunately, if the bad news is that your customer business is so badly impacted, that sector or the customer is on lockdown or shuts off, you have to think that which are sectors that as an entrepreneur, as a SME, you can think of what you do with it, right? I mean, my viewpoint is that farmers, rather than only conventionally thinking of farming and distribution through certain established middlemen or political supply chain, and I'm talking about some maybe sugarcane industry, they have to think that what they can do with that piece of land, how they can actually do more and more, what kind of crop, 24/7, 12 months, how they can do that. And for doing that, like an entrepreneur will take some risk, they will take some financial capital, they'll employ some professionals. Now is the time where we have to start stepping out of our comfort zone and start thinking that if in order to compete and win the game, how can we have that kind of right kind of opportunities, right kind of a mindset and a skill set that is required. In today's world, it is not the big fish that swallows the small fish, it is the faster fish that beats the slower fish.
Yeah. Thank you. Actually, next question is, how should in next few years for an IT organization?
Yeah, in next year, IT organization, I couldn't get the complete question. Can you repeat again?
Yeah. How should be the technology roadmap for an IT organization?
All right. This is like, when you're probably, kid is going to school, you're asking somebody that what is his future? Actually, let him decide that. This technology roadmap, if you actually see, I can give you a general broad answer. The data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, mobility, these are things, virtual reality, these are technologies for future and they are going to be there, right? If you actually see companies like IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, they've actually transformed themselves in spite of their sizes and being monopoly structures. There's no one formula, because what sector you are operating in, what sector your customers are operating in, that will also decide what should be the technology roadmap. What is more important is you have to see that how in the supply chain trends are changing. Now, if you are only a goods producer, maybe if you are an automotive manufacturer, you have to think like emergence of Uber type of models. They are, shifting users from buying the product to consume it as a service. Understand? And maybe, last year our finance minister made a statement about Uber, and that was disproportionately misinterpreted and misquoted by Indian media. Technically it was actually a right statement, but sometimes we only hear the statements from an emotional lens, or we apply certain, so to say, ethics, and then understand today's next generation, they don't aspire to buy and own a car because it is very difficult and painful to drive it on Pune roads. You don't get parking places and it's very expensive, so it is very easy and convenient to Uber it now. That is the new normal for Gen Y. Now imagine that if Uber has become a reality, it has changed the sectors and life for drivers who were working on cabs. Now they are entrepreneurs, they own their cab and they're driving it and they're earning good 50,000-60,000 rupees a month. And including their EMIs and vehicle maintenance, they earn good 30,000-40,000 for themselves. Earlier, they would be paid maybe 12, 15,000 for working 12 hours a shift. So the Uber has been blessing to India because of its mass population, geographical spread, and people want that transportation to be consumed as a service, not as a product. But how it has impacted the manufacturers of that is the mid-range and the passenger vehicle category will have a boom in sale because Uber drivers want to own it. Uber Ola drivers want to own it, not the people. So the mid-range, high-range cars, that sector is
Actually,
going to likely to be affected. So you
yeah.
have to figure out that where are the challenges and where are the opportunities. From that perspective, you have to actually look at it.
Actually, so there is one question from Mr. Juneja that
Mhm.
how can SMEs apply AI and ML as they have limited amount of data?
Well, that's an interesting question. In fact, if you think you have a limited data, if you think what you can do with data, there are incredible opportunities. Just think, I was giving an example of a farming, and let me elaborate on that because it is again a very general question, but let me try and answer it with agriculture example. Now, soil testing is something that you have to do also to claim subsidy, incentive, also get the fertilizer and so on. Now, most of the rural areas, they don't have enough soil testing labs. And this is a very manual process, right? Now, how can you use advanced technology of drones and artificial intelligence into it? Just have flying drones. You can buy them at, anywhere between 25,000 to 75,000. They come with GPS and they are very powerful sensing cameras by weather, by location, and by reading the data about the soil with picture images and video image processing in real time. It will help you by color of the soil to do some level of predictions and push that data in cloud in real time. Now think of this not just as a tech startup, but any farmer who is actually doing that, his son is working somewhere in IT company, staying in remote area, and then struggling, staying there, cot basis or a hostel life. If they are giving him some startup funding and he buys, one drone, he can lease that to other, small farmers.
Tiger.
They can also leverage on, soil testing as a service. Now understand the location data, weather data, applying that weather data to identify patterns. There's a lot of public data available. There is also a lot of big data that is available there. So it is very important that, today, a lot of automotive companies, I'll give you another offbeat example. Michelin tires, for that matter, they don't sell products anymore. They say, we don't sell tires. We give you safety rotation per mile. They have put sensors in tire and they are monitoring that real time. I was talking to one of the large compressor manufacturing company. They said, we are no longer selling complex compressors as a capital investment. We are offering compressed air as a service. We are moving our customer spending from capex to opex. Now that's an interesting way of looking at model. I know one company in Pune that actually does this. They supply power to plant to offices and administrative buildings. They call themselves as a power rental company. They shift your entire capex of power generation for captive power plants to in an opex model. So they set up and they offer power as a service. Now, when you are monitoring such remote sites, whether it is coming from UPS, whether it is coming from gensets, whether it is coming from, your coal or energy or solar, wind kind of an energy plants, you can deploy a lot of technology because you are offering that as a service. And then manufacturing plants who are consuming it, their core competence is not to build, invest and operate a captive power plant. Their business is to produce goods. And that is what I meant by Tesla model, that you choose to do things which you think is your core competence and you don't end up doing all extra or ordinary and general purpose things. That actually takes away lot of time, energy, effort and intellectual wisdom of SME companies. Right? Outsourcing is not only for big companies, it is more important for SMEs and specialist people, that what is your core competence, what you can offer as a value to the market, and all non-core functions can actually, outsource. Like filing a return today, so many people actually can do that online, right? Now, there are a lot of chartered accountants who are offering that as a virtual CFO as a service, right? Why an engineering entrepreneur has to break his head, just reading that balance sheet and preparing for it and running from pillar to post? These are some ideas, these are some ways that we have to adapt as a change that will help you in concentrating on what is your core competence to create a value for the market and liberate you from doing non-core things and activities.
Thank you,
Maybe
sir.
last couple of questions.
Yeah, the last question is, sir, actually the MSMEs or SMEs, how they should start their digital way? Is IoT or other things are the answer to this?
Well, that's subjective. I am not saying that a digitization means a particular thing, activity, or a device. We already are digital. Now, if you see, whoever have asked a question will have a smartphone. They must have, the Google Voice Assistant on their phone. They will have, some payment gateways now being installed. That's digital, right? So if you are not creating it to enable your business, you are consuming it, right? If you are using Facebook for growing your business, then you're earning from it. If you're not using it, Facebook is using it, you're paying for it. It's as simple as that, right? So whether you want to be a consumer or you want to be a creator, very simple logic. If you're a creator, you earn. If you're a consumer, you pay, right? So for digitization to start that, it's not a rocket science. In fact, I would suggest go to the engineering college campuses, throw your ideas as problem statements and run some hackathons. The engineering graduates today, they are very smart. They can actually think of ways and means to how they can solve that problem and come out with you with maybe a competition. Believe me, in the process not only you'll learn, but you will also get a lot of innovative insights as how the Gen Y will look at that, right? I mean, when we started using smartphones, my parents, especially my mom, sometimes you would complain that why all the time you're on phone. One fine day I actually gave her a smartphone, WhatsApp, and now she is also messaging me on a WhatsApp, right? What you want on a tiffin and stuff like that. That's digitization at core. Understand, everybody is there. Go to Facebook. Who is actually using it more? Senior citizens are using it more. That's digitization. We are getting people on digitization platform. Now, how do you choose your communication and conversation? For what purpose is your choice? So again, I'm going back to the same statement. Are you a consumer or you're a creator? If you're an innovator, you're an entrepreneur, you are going to be a value creator rather than a consumer. If you're a consumer, somebody else is making money.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir, for that. Actually, a few questions has been from the educational institutes also, that what technologies they should use and everything. But now you are saying that hackathon and other things, they on their end also can get answers from their students instead of getting it from others. So I think that's all. Thank you very much, sir, for this session. Geeta madam, over to you.
Yeah. On behalf of Maratha Chambers, I thank Mr. Prashant Pansare for this interesting session. Also, his interesting perspectives on opportunities for Indian companies. Prashant, hope people take the cue and do something about it. I have received a lot of messages that they want your email ID and phone number. I hope I can give them. Also, I will share the presentation with whoever is interested in the presentation, which I'm sure it's lots because I've received a lot of chat messages.
Sure.
Thank you again. Thank you very much for this interesting session. I really, really enjoyed it myself.
My pleasure. And the best way to connect is social media. I've been doing a lot of work in data science and artificial intelligence. On my LinkedIn and Twitter, I've been posting a lot of stuff. So that's the best way to connect and engage. So I will share this presentation with Geeta, whoever is interested. Thank you once again for spending your time Saturday morning, with us at Chambers. Wish you and your business all the very best, and let's make our meaningful contribution to make made in India more viable and sustainable reality of tomorrow. Thank you.